Hello, ladies and gentlemen, it's Swissman15, and welcome back to another Factions In-Depth video. This one's going to be on Venice, and now I have Kman Beastalicious with me right now. The last part is in all caps, so I just say it in all caps. So introduce yourself, Kman.
Hello, everyone.
You can say a few things about yourself if you so choose.
Okay, well, first of all, I'm basically the guy that I always play, always play with kits. I'm pretty experienced. I use the Italian factions a lot, and Venice is definitely one of my favorites.
Yes, and so we are here today with Venice, and we can jump straight into it, probably going to Cav, where we just previously agreed that all we're going to say about the Stratiots is they are OP like Cav that cost 610. Isn't that right?
Yes, indeed.
So,
Get rid of them.
I guess the most notable units that they have, just as any other Christian faction, are the Knights Hospitaller and Knights Templar. Do you have anything to say about them?
Not really, other than they're one of the most standard cav units in this game. A lot of factions have them, and without them, the Italian factions would definitely suffer.
Yeah, I don't
especially Venice.
Especially Venice,
well,
but I think Milan would
Venice.
suffice decently with the Famiglia Ducale, but I digress.
Oh yeah, but yeah, okay. That's perfect. Personal preference. Yeah.
But as for the more unique cav, this is more for all the Italian factions, but Venice does have the Broken Lances. They're very, very fast and decently cheap, though quite subpar in ability. Have you used them at all?
They're definitely good shock cav, but I would not leave them in the melee with anything at all.
Yeah, they only have stats of 10, 13. They do have the good charge, and they're pretty fast, like as fast as Conquistadors and what am I thinking of? That other cav.
Norman Knights.
That's it. Thank you for being my words today. And they'll do well enough for your shock cap, but they need to be paralleled with Knights Hospitaller or Templar just to keep a melee force in your cav. Any other cav units you want to talk about?
One thing I would like to mention, especially for low money battles, is the cavalry militia, and it's different from the other Northern European cavalry militia. These Italian ones have a lance, so they have a better charge, and for normal money battles, 15k, I wouldn't use them, but low money, they're definitely a good choice.
Yes, I didn't know they had lances, so that's pretty good information for low money battles. But if we're going to speak about low money battles, I think we should direct our attention to the unit, also cav unit, Men at Arms. Though they're really subpar, 1815 stats plus 7 charge, but they're only 580, a little bit more expensive than the cavalry militia, which are 540, but they will also do well in a low money battle. And the only problem is they don't have good stamina or good morale, which is awkward.
Yeah, I wouldn't, like I said before, I wouldn't use these two cav units in the normal 15k money game, but for low money, they're definitely a very good choice.
Yes, I agree totally with that statement. But I think now we can go on to probably the highlight of the Venetian armies, which would be their infantry. Which one do you want to start with?
Let's start with the infamous Venetian heavy infantry.
Oh, the sweet mothers. They yield those wonderful war axes and the giant shields. Probably my favorite infantry unit in the entire game. They're 640, right? Yeah, and 1616 stats with the armor piercing, so they're very hardy, but they don't have good morale. Anything notable you have to say about them?
They're definitely good on the charge with the charge of 5, and they can hold their own against anything basically. But their morale is an issue.
Yeah, you definitely want to be careful. Put them more in the centers of your line where they won't be outflanked easily, because then they can hold. They can even outmatch Conquistadors in a one-on-one fight as long as they aren't flanked. Also, since Venice has the Caraccio standard, which I think we should talk about quickly and to interrupt the infantry talk, it's pretty much an infantry unit with a giant wooden standard. But yeah, they will hold their own. So, and they're pretty good with upgrades, and they look awesome.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, indeed.
It's definitely you definitely need it for Milan and Venice and the Papal States, because a lot of your infantry units that they don't have the best morale, so you definitely need it.
Yeah, the standard. It is a bit share. It's about 750 florins, which is around a cav unit expensive, so it could be hard to achieve in low money battles. But if it's low money battles, I don't think morale is what you should be really worrying about, since other people won't have as much high tier units as you, since they have the dismounted broken lances and men at arms, very cheap infantry. So how do you use these guys? I'm not very familiar with them.
I don't use them as my main line infantry. I would usually use them for support. Sometimes I would get, one or two and just help with the cav fight, just something to hold the cavalry at bay. And in sieges, I would kind of send them in as um support troops, not to hold the main line, but to support your main line.
Yes, especially they're definitely not mainline troops like the Venetian heavy infantry or the dismounted feudal knights that they have, but they can do some support and they have the great defense to hold out as long as they have a standard nearby to make sure they don't chicken out and run away. And Nafatoons are probably their mortal enemy, but they do quite well. And if you give them armor upgrades, they look like gods.
Oh yeah, they definitely look impressive.
So we can give Venice a few points on style. But one less known, well, not less known, but more so less paid attention to unit that Venice has access to is the Italian Spear Militia. A lot of people sort of just glance over, it's like, spearmen. But I've seen a few people use it well since it is cheap, and for low money battles and an early period unit, you can pretty much use it very well for any of your ends that you so choose, just to ward off cav or put your general in the middle of an infantry unit that can't be charged easily when you do the little Schildtron formation. Have you used them at all?
Yes, I have. They're actually pretty solid against cavalry, even though, most times spearmen don't do as well as they should against cavalry, but Italian spear militia are very cheap, so they can actually do, and they could still do damage.
Yes, I agree completely, but also, when you think about the armored surgeons that pretty much every European faction has, they are almost like 100 full inch cheaper, so good for the money, cost effective. And just I want to mention, but not go too in depth with Venice, just noting that they do have pike militia, which is always useful for someone like maybe you or people who actually use pikes.
Yes, I find them very good against Kitbuka and other people who rush a lot, because you basically have your main line protected. Your archers, your infantry, they can all be protected by some cheap pike militia.
Yeah, and then you can definitely use the skirmish ability that Venice has, and buy yourself time against the rush, which is time is priceless against the rush. But moving on to archers, which Venice has a few notable ones. I think probably Pavis is pretty standard, and you will buy them all the time. So I don't think we have anything particular to say about them, but do you have anything to say about the Venetian archers?
Oh, they are a very good siege battle unit, because they have an attack of 11, so they could hold their own in melee very well.
And a defense of 13 also, with the decent armor to go alongside it. And they're not a crossbow, so they can get the right angles in the siege, which is nice. But I think we can agree not to use them in a field battle.
Yeah, archers can't compete with Pavis in field battles, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, it is the sad truth. And even if you want to get 5 archers, and you have to choose, like, if it get 4 Pavis and a Venetian archer, or get 5 Pavis, 5 Pavis will cost you the same exact amount of money, because the 5th Pavis will cost 610, which is the cost of a Venetian archer unit. Just throwing that factoid out there.
Yeah.
But finally, gunpowder, which we don't typically talk about in these videos that I'm making. But Venice does have musketeer units, which is quite good for games that allow musketeers in them, which are few but available at times. So, have you an experience with these musketeer units?
Um, well, since I play most games that ban gunpowder, no, not really. But I have noticed this whenever they were allowed. They can beat Pavis, but as long as they don't get shot themselves, because there's a glitch where if they get shot while they're in formation, they'll keep trying to reform. They won't get any volleys off.
Yeah, and they definitely need to get the first volley at least to shock the Pavis and maybe even rout them, which I've seen like one volley and the Pavis are gone because they don't have morale. But it's pretty notable if you get the chance to use them. I suggest you take those musketeers and have your way. But that's pretty much all the standard units that Venice has to offer. But I think we have to go on to two pretty notable siege equipment that they have, starting with the Modar. So what do you want to say about that?
Oh, I hate it when I have to face them. I hate it so much.
I feel you.
You know, you can't put your infantry units anywhere. Like nowhere is safe whenever there's a mortar around. They will always. They're very accurate and they can fire over walls. So your troops, rest in peace. I mean, they can't. You can't deal with it, especially in choke points.
Yeah, so I think you're referring to like in a siege when you're crowded in those narrow streets of the fortress, and then you've got the defender with like two mortars all the way back in the town square. Those mortars will just shoot straight up in the air, and they will land amongst your infantry and kill about 10 or 20 each when they hit, and even a general if it's lucky enough. Um,
Yeah. The
in field battles, though, not quite as useful, but still, I've seen a few times, very rarely, that they've been used. Unfortunately, I don't think any of them has worked out too well, so I don't think there's much merit in bringing in a siege battle unless you have a hill where you can safely place them.
oh yeah, I agree.
You agree. Very softly, too. You have a
Yeah.
very soft voice. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Oh, okay.
And then finally,
Uh,
the monster Ribolt. Or Ribolt? Ribolt, that's it. Um,
Ribolt, I think.
Yes, we can pronounce words. It's a pretty
Yeah.
expensive for an artillery piece, but when you get it against any like cavalry or infantry to get the volley off in time, that unit will probably be decimated, at least in half when this volley gets a direct hit. Have you ever used them? I got like one chance to use it, so I don't know about you.
I've seen someone use it in a siege battle before, and unfortunately a field battle where it was useless. But in a siege battle, it can do damage
It can do
in choke
damage.
point.
All right. But I haven't seen it in siege battle. Maybe it could go up like on when you're in a fortress on that little mound in front of the second wall and then guard a street. I think I want to try that now if I ever get into a siege battle again. Giving me good ideas, you are. Um, but so, what do you say about the overall cost and balance of Venice? What are your final comments on it?
I think it is for the most part a balanced faction. However, I'm sure you can try and use it for a rush if you want to catch your opponent off guard. However, the it's not very effective, at least not as effective as other rushes, but it can catch your opponent off guard
Yeah,
if you rush.
especially with the amount of infantry that it has at its disposal, though not the best quality, you could get a large volume of infantry, of heavy infantry with the standard, and you can probably pose a good rush, which would probably throw a few people off guard when they're like, oh, probably a balanced army that he's getting with Venice. Um, I agree that it's a really cheap faction for cheap battles. At least it's capable of doing so in any case, and it's a very strong siege faction as long as you can handle the poor morale of most of its infantry. And I just want to say it is probably the most style, the faction with the most style in the entire game. They look the best. I give that to Venice hands down.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, the men-at-arms and broken lances, 10 out of 10.
And then the Venetian heavies look pretty cool. Even the Venetian archers have their own little swagger to them. Swagger. I haven't
Yes, they
used that in a
do.
long time.
Swig.
But I is there any other thing that we haven't mentioned that you want to say about Venice, or are you pretty much done with them?
Um, oh, one unit that I should quickly mention, cavalry, that we forgot to say. Mounted crossbowmen. I always
Oh.
hate it when people bring one of these to field battles because I have a real difficulty dealing with them, and people who I play with a lot, like Kitbuka for example, they know that I hate missile cav, so it's effective
It's called playing your
for just
opponent.
harassing your enemy.
I've
Yeah,
never
it's called
been.
being
Yeah, go on.
it's called Turkish warfare because you don't just win the battle, you just annoy your enemy till they admit defeat. It's petty.
I've never had any skill using missile cav, but I have noted there's. It's pretty easy to usually stop it. You just get your own crossbows just to fire one volley or two, and something like mounted crossbows will be down pretty quick. They can't even charge, and they have poor morale. So I don't typically like using them, and I'm not particularly phased by them. But they can be pesky in the right hands. So I want to thank you, Kman, for coming to speak about Venice and putting some light on and things that I had no idea, like the lances for the cavalry militia. So I thank you very much.
Yup, no problem.
And thank you all who have watched. I hope you guys learned a little bit in this episode. And like, comment, subscribe. We'll see you all in the next time. Goodbye, my friends.
Goodbye.